Welcome to the Sub 1000 Recruitment Podcast. With so much of the recruitment industry conversation aimed at big enterprise talent acquisition teams, we decided recruiters at smaller everyday organizations need to be heard. In 2023, we launched our free-to-join Sub 1000 online community. We have thousands of in-house recruiters and HR professionals from everyday organizations who recruit less than 1,000 staff a year, in some cases less than 100. And if you are listening to this, you've probably guessed the next bit. We've also launched a podcast to hear direct from those recruiters. Their stories, insights and experiences about how they get the job done on a limited budget, with limited support, in either a small team or perhaps completely on their own. Tune in every fortnight to hear from your direct peers. And if you want to get involved, join our free online community at sub1000.com. This week's episode is sponsored by our friends at Personio. Personio is the flexible HR platform that adapts to how you work. Try it today.
Hello everybody, welcome to another Sub 1000 podcast. Today we're joined by Vicky, who has 13 years experience working across recruitment and talent acquisition roles. So we're really looking forward to diving into some of that experience and for Vicky to share some insights. We start every podcast off with the same two questions. So question one, we'll ask, how did you first start out in recruitment? And question two, just share a little bit of your experience to date. So Vicky, question one, please let us know how you started off in recruitment.
Yeah, no problem. I think like everybody, I fell into it. It wasn't a conscious decision. I'd worked in sales through my 20s and I found myself unfortunately made redundant in 2010 and literally walked into a temp recruitment agency looking for work, and they offered me some selling opportunities, so appointment making for some of the recruitment consultants. And long story short, that led to an offer to be a recruitment consultant, and I was running a transport desk, so HGV drivers, and also then I ran an industrial desk. Did that for about 3 years. It's quite, if you've ever done anything like that, it's quite intense. It's 24/7, temporary, high volume recruitment. And so after 3 years, I moved into developing a commercial desk, which I enjoyed. It was kind of it was less pressure, I would say. There was no on-call associated with it. But after kind of 3 or 4 years in that kind of role, I decided that I'd kind of had enough of agency recruitment and it was time to move on. So I took quite a risk. I took a 6-month fixed-term contract in an engineering business as a resourcing partner. And that was kind of, my first move into in-house recruitment.
And so we understand how you get into recruitment, how you got into recruitment. So tell us a little bit more about your career today.
Yeah, so from taking that first 6-month fixed term contract in-house recruitment, really steep learning curve. It was quite difficult and quite stifling, going from working in a role that was just focused on sales and revenue into a role where you essentially have one internal client and a lot more kind of HR focused and a lot more processes and procedures. So I did struggle a little bit at first. I found it quite stifling, but then quickly found my feet and started to understand kind of how much satisfaction there was from being able to bring people into a business that had a lot more understanding of and watch their careers grow and really see that, it is kind of a long-term match for them. So after 6 months, I was made permanent in that role. I did the resourcing partner role for 3 years there and then was promoted into a talent acquisition manager. That role was great in terms of giving me access to some more senior stakeholders, being able to understand a little bit more about the strategy of the business and really understand how my delivering on that people plan really impacted what the business was able to do, how they could complete projects. So I really enjoyed that. I stayed with that business for 5 years. Then I moved out of the area. At the time, hybrid working wasn't really an option. And in my current role, so currently I work for PA Media Group. They are quite a diverse media business. So I'm the talent acquisition lead with them. They've got 9 different brands. Within those brands, they have all different disciplines. So we can recruit for anything and everything. So one day we will be recruiting for journalists, but then we'll also have roles for kind of technical roles, software engineers, finance roles, HR roles, you name it. It kind of spans lots of different disciplines. So I've had to kind of become more comfortable, I suppose you would say, with not understanding every single part of that business, and kind of develop new skills to make sure that I'm able to support with such a wide variety.
And obviously working within those teams, what is one thing that if you do well will really make recruitment that much easier?
I would say that one of the things, it's quite a simple thing, but I've found time and again that it's just absolutely essential. It would be to take a really comprehensive brief at the beginning of the process. Don't make assumptions. Make sure that you fully understand the role yourself, because if you don't, I feel like you will definitely be kind of exposed further on, and make it more difficult for yourself. So I would say take that brief, make sure that you fully understand the role, how it contributes to the business overall. It will help you to build a really effective advert. It will be great when you're screening candidates and you're able to share more information with them. It will just really speed up the process. What I found is that when volume increases, there is a tendency to try and kind of think, I think I understand this one, we've recruited for this one before, and make assumptions. And I find every single time that not having that conversation at the beginning means that, it takes me longer further down the line, and it does, it means a poorer candidate experience, I find.
And with candidate experience, Vicky, we all know it's such an integral part of the recruitment process, but how or could maybe small teams or people in those standalone roles still find the time and improve those processes around that candidate experience, candidate communication?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we're a small team, we're just 2 people, and we're looking after those variety of vacancies group wide. So there's a couple of things that I think you can really tap into to support. I think automation is a key one. If you have an applicant tracking system, try and automate as many of the day-to-day tasks as you possibly can. So the things we automate are things like interview arrangements. We'll send out kind of email updates to several candidates at the same time, letting candidates know the outcome of their application using automation. All those things, can save you just so much time, and make sure that you're really committed to letting candidates know what's happening. So I think that's great. The one thing that I would say with automation is that nobody wants to feel like they're on the receiving end of an automated email. So I think the key with it is to make sure that you edit that as much as you can, make sure it's really got the tone of your business in there, and that it adds value. So for example, when we are sending out interview confirmations to candidates, we always do competency-based interviews. So we will talk about the STAR framework and how to be really successful in those interviews. I feel like that really adds value, rather than it just feeling like, you're just giving them the basic details about the interview. So I think automation is really essential in helping to support small teams.
So Vicky, we understand that the candidate experience is a really important part of your recruitment process. But is there any way that you measure and understand if the candidates are actually having the experience you want them to?
Yeah, so we actually use our applicant tracking system to survey candidates following an interview. So we will send out, there's only 6 questions. Every single candidate that has an interview gets those questions regardless of the outcome. And we've recently started to include questions about how inclusive they felt that the whole process was. I think it's something that you need to get comfortable with, being able to kind of hear that and act on that, because that is the only way that you're going to get, really, you're going to get familiar with those blind spots that you might have around the process. But again, really think about those questions. So if you do have the opportunity to use survey questions, make them a good fit for your business. And also make sure that you are giving candidates the opportunity to kind of add their own narrative in there, because some of the insights that we've got from that have just been invaluable.
So Vicky, you currently work in quite a small recruitment team. Is there any other tools out there that you could perhaps recommend or share how you're using just to help make your time the most efficient it can be?
Yeah, I think the main one that we're using at the moment is AI. It really has been, a real game changer for us as a small team. And we use it for things like generating a starter for job adverts. We use it to generate great interview questions. I will use it to make sure that I'm using really inclusive language in job adverts. So it's a really great tool for automating day-to-day tasks in the talent acquisition team. I think the only thing that I would say with that is to really exercise caution. So AI, and by its very nature, is it can perpetuate bias to some degree, because obviously it's using historic information that it's got in there to generate the answers. So I think to absolutely use it as as a basis and as a start point, but then to be very careful and just check that you are making sure that it's really fit for purpose and it's the message that you want to be giving to your candidates. And the only other thing that I would say about AI, and I think this applies to automation very much as well, is that actually what recruiters are going to have to do is really dial up their soft skills. So great communication and interpersonal skills are going to become even more valuable, I think, across talent acquisition as a whole. And I think the way that automation and AI is going to fit into that is it's going to automate those day-to-day tasks for you, but that should be freeing you up to have those really valuable conversations with candidates and spend the time with your stakeholders internally to really understand your business as well.
So when you have a candidate and the candidate has applied for a vacancy with your organisation, Vicky, it's very easy then to start that two-way communication with the candidates. But how can you make sure that candidates have a great experience and have some really great communication before they've actually applied to a vacancy?
Well, I would probably tie this into the earlier answer around taking a really comprehensive job brief and really understanding the role that you're recruiting for, because I think that what that allows you to do is write a very authentic advert. It allows you to fully understand what is really required for the role and what is a nice to have, and to capture all those things in the advert. So right from the beginning, a candidate is able to look at your advert, understand what you're looking for, understand a bit more about the business, and almost judge for themselves whether they've got the right skills and experience to be able to do that job. So I think that's one of the key things. I think the other things that you can do is be very open about what a candidate can expect from you. So make sure that you are very clear on we have, for example, a bit of a candidate pledge that sits alongside our adverts. As I said, we've got those 9 different brands, and so we have branded pages, and we will include in there details of what a candidate can expect in terms of next steps, in terms of our commitment to them. So we will let every candidate know, for example, the outcome of their application. Every candidate that has an interview with us will get constructive feedback. Those are the things that I think, contribute to candidate care before they've even applied. I would say that the other thing is making sure that all your messages are properly captured. So I think a lot of people will really focus on their careers website. What we're very conscious of is that a lot of the time people are not landing in there. They're not looking for a job in there. They've come from other sites. So they may have come through Indeed, for example. So making sure that you've captured that information that you really want them to read in the body of the advert, and don't rely on them looking at your website, because I think, in over half of the cases, we know that nobody actually lands there to see all that information. So, for example, your message around inclusion, I think that's absolutely key, and any flexible working arrangements, things like that, all need to be captured in there.
So in the modern era, there's so many ways to communicate with candidates. You can use social media, you've got text messaging, you've got the old-fashioned phone call, you've got email. How do you make the best use of these channels to maximise that communication with candidates?
I think it's about choice, really. So if I think about, I've had a few situations where I've communicated bad news to candidates where they basically I'm letting them know that they've been unsuccessful, and I've just gone to how I would want to be communicated with, which would always be on the phone. And in a couple of cases, I've had situations where people have been upset, haven't really been able to take on the feedback. So now I think it's all about asking them. So from that initial candidate call that I have with them, the screening call, I will talk to them about when's a good time to contact them, how's a good time to contact them, and just make sure that you kind of stick to that. Some people will absorb information a lot better on an email. They can take the time and reflect on it, but other people want a phone call. So I think just taking the time and making sure that you communicate in their preferred way is the best.
And Vicky, do you have any personal experience of being a candidate? And if so, how did you find those application processes?
I do. And overall, my experience as a candidate has been really positive, outside of the actual application process. So the only frustrations that I've ever had is applying for roles and not hearing anything. I think I see on adverts, and less so nowadays, but I've seen on adverts for years the line about, if you hadn't heard from us in 14 days, assume you've been unsuccessful. And I just think that's not really something that I would advocate for at all. I think communication is key, letting people know that you've received their application, thanking them. But yeah, for me personally, beyond that, overall it's been good.
So we've reached the end of our Sub 1000 podcast today with Vicky. So thank you very much for your time today, Vicky.
Thank you.
Vicky is also a member of the Sub 1000 community. So if there's anything you've listened to today which you have found really interesting, you might just want to delve into it in a little bit more detail, then Vicky, are you happy for people to message you directly in the Sub 1000 community, or maybe tag you in some posts if they're looking for advice?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again for your time, Vicky, and appreciate you sharing your experience.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.